Like sand falling through the hourglass, so too does the time of our lives. About 3 years ago, I played a roguelite called Hades, as I had seen it on Xbox Game Pass and had heard from many people that it was really good. I'm typically not a fan of roguelites, as I tend to not like the aspect of needing to fail a bunch of times, just so that you can afford the upgrades to get stronger and complete your runs. I find that to be kinda lame. But I was already aware of the publisher, Supergiant Games, and wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt. This then led into a month-long period where I did nothing but play Hades in my free time, until I beat the game and got the epilogue. Hades to me is the perfect example of how you make a roguelite system work. Your success in a run will mostly come from you learning the environments, how the bosses behave, and how to deal with the various problems that you will experience in a run. The roguelite elements are there to give you various boosts and help you as you tackle some of the game's harder challenges. Every system in this game works phenomenally, so when I heard about the production of Hades 2, I was very excited as I knew that Supergiant were capable of delivering something that could fill the shoes of being a sequel to probably the best roguelite ever made. So, too long didn't watch. Hades 2 is extremely good, and I would highly recommend it. So, our story begins with Melano, daughter of Persephone and Hades. She was promised a good life in the House of the Dead, but the Titan Kronos attacks, leaving Hecate, the Witch of the Crossroads, to raise her in Erebus, training her in secret with the hopes that Melanoe can become the secret weapon that they need to stop the Titan of Time. Right off the bat, things are much more serious than they were in Hades 1. No longer is Zagreus running about disrespecting his father and trying to see Persephone. The world is ending, and you need to complete the impossible task of stopping time. This change in mood is heavily reflected in the art style, and the feelings the game portrays. The music is darker, the environments are duller, and all of the characters that you meet have this air of wartime about them. This creates a surprising air of tension that keeps you moving forward as you try to save your family. Hades 2, just like Hades 1, has a lot of messages about family, but it doesn't present them in the sitcom drama angle that the first game did. Instead, there's a bigger focus on obligation and loyalty, which is often brought into question as Melanoe never knew her parents or brother. The doubts Melanoe has about her parentage and purpose are often quick dialogues of self-doubt and reaffirmation.
Don't say such things. I am not your mother, Melanoe.
And while I understand they can't show all of the doubts she had in the past, or have any meaningful fulfillment to these thoughts of hers, for the reason that it would mess up the gameplay, I still wish that we could see more from that angle of her character, as it paints a really interesting contrast from her brother, Zagreus, who was very much his mother's son, and whose ultimate purpose was to help the family and the house, as well as all the friends that he made with it. Melanoe and Zagreus are fairly distinct from each other, though not just in character, but in fighting style too. Zagreus was built up as an ode to traditional Greek heroes. Jason, Heracles, Theseus, Achilles, Perseus. They are all these god-favored athletes, and proficient with many weapons, and were also hella good looking. Meanwhile, Melanoe is shown to be a nimbler witch, proficient with arcane arts, and master of the nocturnal arms. This translates extremely well into gameplay, where you are given a wide variety of spells and abilities that add a lot of complexity and variety to make up for the loss of mobility, health, and power that you had at the start in the first game. This creates an amazing amount of builds that you can achieve in this game, and there is an astounding amount of potential from each weapon and ability that Millennium has. I really dig it. I had faith in Supergiant in this aspect already, as I was extremely impressed by how well they had did it in Hades 1. If all they did was port that system over and call it good, I wouldn't have a problem. But Supergiant thoroughly outdid themselves with the build crafting system in this game. Though build crafting isn't the only thing that I'd say has improved from the first game, as I would say that the art is generally better in this game as well. Or, well, what you can see of it. There is still plenty of developer art and placeholder images in the game, but from what you can see in the game right now, it's generally sharper, and feels extremely refined to me. But given how good it was in the first game as well, this is probably all preference on my part. I'd say that I prefer the character designs in this game as well. Everyone feels very distinct, and their designs tell their story and character perfectly. Once again, however, this is all my opinion. I loved the art in the first game, and the art in Bastion, another Supergiant game, was incredible as well. Though, before I keep singing the praises of this game, I have a couple of grievances I'd like to share towards it. My first and biggest one is that I don't like the feel of about half the weapons in the game. Namely, the Moonstone Axe and the Umbral Flames, as to me they feel significantly more underwhelming when compared to the rest of the weapons. In Hades 1, the weapons all felt great, and were excellently tuned so that for the most part, it didn't feel that one or the other were outright better than the rest. Except for the shield, that shit was ass. In Hades 2, however, I feel that the only weapons that are really good to use are the Witch's Staff, the Sister Blades, and the Argent's Skull. Both of these games recommend experimentation and switching things up, but it's kinda hard when, if I want any amount of success in a run, I only have a few options to pick from, or else it's just doomed from the start. This is only made more noticeable by the fact that the bosses feel a little overtuned right now, and are a slog to fight if you're coming at them with a bad loadout. This kinda kills my enjoyment for the game sometimes, but it's never for that long. I understand that this game is still early access, and we are likely to see some changes to the weapons, boons, and enemies in the future. So I'm really not all that upset. While I said that I think they are slightly overtuned, I love all of the boss fights in this game. They're all weird and dangerous, and even after all the runs I have put into this game, I still don't have them all down completely. I especially enjoy that most of them have this special element about them that makes them very fun to fight. My favorite of the 6 currently in the game at the moment has to be Scylla and the Sirens. Fighting the 3 of them at once and learning how to avoid their attacks as they bombard you is very satisfying. It also helps that we got the hair metal inspired music and vibe coming off the entire fight. Reminds me of the Hex Girls from that one Scooby-Doo movie. I really hope that Supergiant is planning on adding the extreme measures from Hades 1 into this game as well as the various boss variants that we saw in that game. I would love to see what insane fights they can make. So, I don't really know how to fit this in, but the music in this game is really good. I once saw a comment on a video that said it's like Mediterranean, ancient Greek inspired prog rock, and I think that's just a perfect description. It remains kind of similar to the first game's music with many of its themes and leitmotifs, but it has many of these, for a lack of a better term, Halloween-esque feelings to many of the tracks. It's especially noticeable in the main title theme and much of Erebus's tracks. Something I am really enjoying and am excited to see more of in the future is the alternate route that is in the game. One of my biggest problems with Hades 1 was just how repetitive it could feel while you went through the same 4 zones every single run. I really feel that game could have been vastly improved by adding some alternate floors. So I was really glad to see that this was included as a feature in Hades 2. If you want the more traditional dungeon crawling layout, you can take the normal route that leads to Tartarus and Kronos. But if you want a more experimental and open-ended dungeon layout, you can go up to the surface and attempt to reach Mount Olympus. This route is currently unfinished, sadly, but it works as an extra bit of fun that can help break up the monotony that you can feel during the normal run. The old path is also much harder in my opinion, so I'd recommend getting a few of your upgrades first before trying to tackle the 2 areas that they got. I've been thoroughly enjoying my time with Hades 2, and likely will be playing a lot more of it in the future. Seeing what the devs have laid out on the roadmap has me pretty excited, but there are a couple of things I'd like to see soon, like some weapon changes, a couple of tweaks to the bosses, and I think it'd be cool if they made it a little easier to collect the crafting materials needed for the upgrades. Later on, however, I think it'd be really cool if they added the hidden aspects to the weapons, just like in Hades 1, and more familiars. And this is going to be a real shot in the dark, and maybe worthy of an entire paid DLC. But I'd like to see Zagreus appear as an alternate character with the infernal arms. I recognize that this is a ridiculous request, but I think it'd be really cool and really shake up the game by having the option to pick between these 2 characters. Melenaway would be a more nimble character with all of her spells and abilities that she has, while Zagreus would be a more physical-based character. Well, I think this game is amazing, and huge props to the devs for making something this good without it actually even being finished yet. Like seriously, I've only encountered 1 bug during my 29 hours I've played so far. Sadly I didn't get any footage of it, but this is a really welcome change, as opposed to the current state of gaming, where we are lucky to see a full game release that's actually complete. Supergiant has once again made something very special, and with how much the first game shook up the indie roguelike scene, I'm sure we will see something similar with this game, especially when we eventually see the full release. That's all I gotta say though. Take care, and thanks for watching.